The Comedian. In the early 1920s, a comedian by the name of Sweet River Robinson was struggling to make a living on the road. Sweet River was hitting comedy clubs, hosting music shows, and opening for all kinds of acts. If there was a stage and a paycheck, he was there. Back in those days, there were still two kinds of clubs. There were the white clubs, and there were the colored clubs. Even though Sweet River was considered good enough to perform in both, society would not yet accept him as being good enough to be a patron in both. Society would eventually change, but that is another story. This is the story of a man just trying to make a living by making others laugh. It all started on a night just like any other. Sweet River was in the middle of a tour of the Catskills. He was trying out some new material and improvising on stage, when suddenly he started doing a revolutionary type of material that had never been performed before. He started telling jokes about the differences between black people and white people. The crowd instantly loved it. He had never heard a crowd roar with laughter like that before. He immediately went back to his hotel and wrote down as many jokes about the differences between black people and white people as he could think of. Over the next couple months, Sweet River's new material became more and more refined, and his popularity grew substantially. Before long, Sweet River's act was entirely about the differences between black people and white people, mainly because that's what people wanted to hear. Sweet River was now a big success and no longer struggling to make a living on the road. Long gone were the days of dirty clubs in the Catskills and roach-infested hotels. Now, Sweet River would only perform in enormous theaters, auditoriums, and sports arenas. However, his shows were still segregated. In every city, he would still do a show for blacks and then a show for whites, although his act was always exactly the same. With all his newfound riches and success, Sweet River still wasn't very happy, and he was well on his way to becoming another depressed comedian. The truth was, he didn't think his new act was very funny at all. He never liked those types of jokes. It was just something he randomly said one fateful night in the Catskills that, for reasons he could not understand, took off. He sorely missed performing his old act, and now feared he'd become what he despised most of all, a complete hack relying on cheap gimmicks for laughs. And above all else, he actually didn't think black people and white people were very different at all. It also made him sad that as much as both blacks and whites loved his act equally, they still weren't allowed to enjoy it together. But it was far too late to change what he had done. Sweet River was now known as that guy, and to make things worse, multiple copycat comedians were now popping up all over the country. They were performing different material, but with the same format and cheap gimmicks. Sweet River eventually stopped performing. He hoped the trend he had started would die out, but it never did, and he lived his remaining years with the guilt of the perpetual monster he had created. He died in 1953 at the age of 87, just before the start of the Civil Rights Movement. But that is another story.